Good day, my name is Sanchy Martillan. So this day, we will be learning about global demography. Demography represents the study of statistics such as birth, deaths, and incident of disease which illustrate the changing structure of the human population, and this pose an effect on globalization as a whole. So in general, demography pertains the composition of particular human population. We will also learning the key fact that associated the study of demography, and this includes birth rates, migration, mortality rate, life expectancy, fertility rate, median age, and age dependency ratio. Birth rates. A particular individual is added to the population is through birth, and new individuals, the way we measure the particular type of addition is with the natality rate of the birth rates, which is the number of birth per 1,000 individual per unit of time, and usually that is within a year. Mortality rates. One way that individuals leave a population and reduce its size is through deaths of individual, and the way we measure this is the way of mortality rate, which is the number of deaths per 1,000 individual per unit of time. Migration. Migration also affects population patterns. The second way that individuals are added to population is through immigration. This is the permanent arrival of new individual is into population. These individuals are of course the same species in the rest of population, and they increase the size of population as they join in a group. Second, individual may live through immigration. This permanent movement of individual out of population. Life expectancy. Expectation of life at a given age is the average number of years which a person of that age may expect to live according to the mortality pattern prevalent in that country. As a result of global decline in fertility and because people are live longer, global life expectancy is rising. This is what we mean 60 is the new 40 and 70 is the new 50. In general, people are getting younger, and that is result of investment in health and medicine, in innovation, in science and technology, and so on. Fertility rate. Total number of children born by a woman at a point of time during her childbearing 15 to 45 years. There are several factors such as lifestyle factor, increase in sexually transmitted disease, rise in obesity, and environmental factors involved in urbanization at urban lifestyle, later affecting fertility and have led rise in male and female subfertility. In addition, there are socioeconomic factors that have led to composed of women delaying having children, lack of affordable housing, flexible and part-time career post for women, expensive child care, have all contribute to the current low fertility of birth rate. Median age. Median age is the age that divides a population into two numeral equally sized groups. That is, half the people are younger than this age and half are older. It is a single index that summarizes the age distribution of population. The global median age has increased from 21.7 in 1970 to over 30 in 2019. Age dependency ratio. The ratio of dependency people younger than 15 or older than 74 to the working age population, this age 15 to 64. Proportion of dependents per 100 working age population. It is a measure of number of dependents age 0 to 14 and over the age of 65 compared to the total population age 15 to 65.
The perils of overpopulation. Let's get to know first what is the meaning of perils and overpopulation. Perils is a serious and immediate danger. And overpopulation is an undesirable condition where the number of existing human population exceeds the actual carrying capacity of Earth. In other words, human population is among the most pressing environmental issues, silently aggravating the forces behind global warming, environmental pollution, habitat loss, the sixth mass extinction, extensive farming practices, and the consumption of the finite natural resources. The more people, the more damage will brought. It is actually a man-made issue. This discussion will be about the role of population growth, which was stated in 1798, an essay of the principle of population by British scholar Thomas Malthus, who also warned that it will exhaust the world food supply. His prediction was off guard, but was revived in late 1960s when American biologist Paul R. Ehrlich and his wife Anne, who wrote The Population Bomb, that population will bring global environment disasters that would in turn lead to food shortage and mass starvation. Now, what is the main cause of overpopulation? According to research, poverty is the biggest reason to cause the overpopulation. The lack of educational resources, combined with high mortality rates, which led to high birth rates, then led to a large increase in the population of poor areas. Now, it's very clear nowadays we see the reality. I can say that if wala tayong enough money para maibigay na support sa ating mga anak, wag na lang magdagdag ng magdagdag. Kasi lalo lang tayong mahihirapan at dadagdag sa problema ng Pilipinas. Now, according to the book, when American biologist Paul Ehrlich with his wife, they recommend that us would take the lead in promotion of global population control. Some of the recommendations is institution building, where it is a powerful department of population and environment. Now, I want to ask you a question. What are the problems of overpopulation? If we look deeper in the problem, overpopulation worsens numerous environmental and social factors, such as pollution. For example of this, old cars that are blown dark smokes from the big companies and the people that are smoking. Malnutrition. It is due to poverty. Many children are experiencing starvation because their parents cannot afford or cannot provide their basic needs, specifically their everyday food. And moreover, overcrowded living conditions. And this is actually happening in big cities like Cagayan de Oro City. So there are lots of people living in a crowded area. And lastly, lacking healthcare, which makes poor communities vulnerable to infectious diseases, such as tuberculosis, malaria, HIV, and dysentery faster in overpopulated areas. And in these trying times, the COVID-19 pandemic, where people are having lots of changes in adapting a new normal. In other words, people never get tired of exploring the world. Like every day has a new opportunity. And however, everything we do has an impact, whether it is good or bad. Next, what are the positive and negative effects of overpopulation? Unahin muna natin yung positive effects, okay? Number one, increased human resources. One obvious advantage that some people believe can be found in a large population is a greater number of human resources. This will most likely not lead to an increase in jobs in places in which unemployment has been a major issue. But with more people, there will be an increase of people willing to work for less. Next, higher demand in industry. It is evident today that we want this, we need this, and so on. Logic would dictate that a country with a higher population will ensure more of a demand in certain industries. A company that sells a good or service with a high demand will obviously be very successful as long as it has an output large enough to meet said demand. This is a slippery slope, however, as resources are finite, even if demand is not. Number 3, increased military might. The more people, the more problems. Maraming babantayan na tao. If a country can control its large population, it can have a significant military advantage over smaller countries. If the economy is stable, and if the government can properly manage its increasing number of people, the military size will increase, along with the military supplies. Additionally, an increase in population can lead to an increase in technology, which will allow for the production of more sophisticated military products. Next, cheaper and more readily available products. Having cheaper and more readily available products and services is something that is probably only a serious advantage in the short term, but it is an effect that overpopulation can have on a society. Having more people who are willing to work will mean there will be more goods and services available to people. Since there will be a large supply, prices will go down and certain things will become more affordable. For example, Shopee, di ba? Nasa Shopee na lahat yung kinakailangan natin. So, sa Shopee makikita natin yung mga bagay na affordable, kaya lang sa ating budget. On the other hand, these are the fatal negative effects. So I'll just read some of these effects, negative effects. So first is the depletion of natural resources. The effects of overpopulation are quite severe. The first of this is the depletion of resources. The earth can only produce a limited amount of water and food, which is falling short of the current needs. They include cutting down forests, hunting wildlife in a reckless manner, causing pollution, and creating a host of other problems. With the overuse of coal, oil, and natural gas, it has started producing some serious effects in our environment. Besides, the exponential rise in the number of vehicles and industries that has badly affected the quality of air. Overpopulation in developing countries puts a major strain on the resources it should be utilizing for development. Conflicts over water are becoming a source of tension between countries, which could result in wars. It causes more diseases to spread and makes them harder to control. When a country becomes overpopulated, it gives rise to unemployment as there are fewer jobs to support a large number of people. The rise of unemployment gives rise to crime, such as theft, as people want to feed their families and provide them basic amenities of life. As the difference between demand and supply continues to expand due to overpopulation, it raises the prices of various essential commodities, including food, shelter, and healthcare. This means that people have to pay more to survive and feed their families. Poverty is linked to many environmental and social reasons, including overcrowded and unhygienic living conditions, malnutrition, and inaccessible, inadequate, or non-existent healthcare, for which the poor are more likely to be exposed to infectious diseases. Further, high densities of population increase the chance of the emergence of new pandemics and epidemics. When the availability of the resources is scarce, starvation, malnutrition, along with ill health and diseases caused by diet deficiency, such as rickets, become more likely. Roughly 1% of the world's water is fresh and accessible. Overpopulation is a major issue that creates immense pressure on the world's freshwater supplies. A large proportion of the world's population growth occurs in less developed countries. Therefore, lower life expectancy caused by the booms in population is experienced by less developed nations. And the impact of overpopulation on the world's wildlife is severe as demand for land grows. The destruction of natural habitats, such as forests, becomes common. Data has also been collected to show a direct link between increases in human population and decreases in the number of species on the planet. If present trends continue, as many as 50% of the world's wildlife species will be at risk of extinction, some scientists warn. So these are just only a few, but There's a lot, so just be aware. Now, how can we fix overpopulation? So I'll just read some of the possible solutions, and these are only based on research. So first is empower women. Study shows that women with access to reproductive health services find it easier to break out of poverty, while those who work are more likely to use birth control. The United Nations Population Fund aims to tackle both issues at once, running microcredit projects to turn young women into advocates for reproductive health. Second is to promote family planning. Simply educating men and women about contraception can have a big impact. When Iran introduced a national family planning program in 1989, its fertility rate fell from 5.6 births per woman to 2.6 in a decade. A similar effort in Rwanda saw a threefold increase in contraception usage in just 5 years. So it's very important, and we have a lot of ways to control or to have a family planning, just like using condoms, right? Next is make education entertaining. The US-based Population Media Center gets creative to reach women. It's radio soap operas which feature culturally specific stories about reproductive issues have been heard by as many as 500 million people in 50 countries. In Ethiopia, 63% of women seeking reproductive health services reported tuning in. And fourth is the government incentives. Those at UK Charity Population Matters believe there should be a senior government official responsible for addressing population-related issues. They urge governments to promote responsible parenthood and say subsidies should be limited to the first two children unless the family is living in a poverty. And the last one is one-child legislation. One-child legislation. During China's high controversial one-child policy, fertility fell from 6 births per woman in the 1960s to 1.5 in 2014. However, Amnesty International reports that the policy led to coerced or forced abortions and sterilizations. And it is also disrupted traditional support structures for the elderly and led to a gender imbalance. In our case, what can you suggest or do as a citizen? Well, for me, I will educate myself first and prioritize my studies so that in the near future, I can provide my family's needs. Also, family planning is very important and being knowledgeable is an advantage. On the other hand, with a simple act, we can achieve and help to our economy growth.
It's the economy, not the babies. In 1960, the population grew fast in many countries by spurring technological innovation and increasingly the supply of human integrity. Example of population that prevent economic crisis is West Mahatma. They are using substitute for social justice and much needed reform. Land distribution, employment creation, provision, and mass education in healthcare and emancipation. They acknowledge the shift in population from the rural and the urban areas 52% to 75% in developing world since 1950s. The median of 29.4 years for females and 30.9 for males in the city's young working population. As a country, baby boom generations get older for a time, it constitutes a large cohort group of working age individuals. They are and later a large cohort of elderly people. In all circumstances, there are reason to think that this is a very dynamic age structure will have economic consequences.
Not because a baby kung bakit hindi tayo umuunlad dahil we are overpopulated, but because of our economy that we live in. Because of its low income, the economy cannot sustain to the population.
Good day everyone, my name is Klinth of Pahayahay, and my presentation for today is all about women and reproductive rights. The nature of the work means that dealing with issues which are upsetting or distressing. When working on, it is important to remember that many of the issues addressed will have happened to people participating. This means that whether realized or not, you are likely to work with people who have had some direct experience of the issues discussed. Activists and or those that they engage with may also have strongly held religious beliefs. You may want to reaffirm that upholds the human rights to freedom of religious belief, thought, and conscience. We also uphold the right to live without discrimination, intimidation, or violence, and in this area of human rights, these rights sometimes come into conflict. Objectives: to ensure everyone has access to their sexual and reproductive rights, to stop criminalization of sexuality and reproduction by governments, to make tangible changes in key campaign countries. In terms of human rights, regularly they talk about just in terms and religious beliefs, morality, shame, or guilt. This approach ignores the human rights defenders on the ground beating hard and in dangerous contexts, and it ignores that human rights are fundamental and innate. We still have some way to go for people to see sexual and reproductive rights as human rights. Sexual and reproductive rights. Sexual and reproductive rights are human rights that belong to us all. What do you think our sexual and reproductive rights are? Make decisions about your own health, body, sexual life, and identity without fear of coercion or criminalization. Seek and receive information about sexuality and reproduction and access related health services and contraception. Access family planning, contraception, safe and accessible post-abortion care. Access to abortion in cases of rape, sexual assault or incest, and pregnancy that pose a risk to the life or to physical or mental health, and where legal access to safe abortion services. All over the world, people are coerced, criminalized, and discriminated against simply for making choices about their bodies and their lives. Sexuality and childbearing are sensitive issues, and many people find them difficult to talk about in public. The freedom to make decisions about your own health, body, sexual life, and identity is a fundamental human right. Such decisions are important and may be difficult, so to reach them, people may need support, information, and health services. But the power to decide must remain with the person most directly coerced. These are the overview is criminalization of abortion, discriminatory laws, particularly regarding gender-based violence, access to sexual reproductive health services, including access to information. The state of sexual and reproductive health across the world, especially of women, is dire. Millions of adolescent girls give birth every year, usually as a result of coerced sex and unwanted pregnancies. In addition, 40% of women of childbearing age live in countries where abortion is banned, restricted, or not accessible. These are just a few of the facts and stats that shine a light on the state of sexual reproductive health. Abortion policy. Amnesty International seeks to ensure that women have access to safe, legal termination of pregnancy in case of rape, incest, or when a woman or girl's life or health is at risk. Amnesty took a position on abortion as part of its new sexual and reproductive rights policy. This policy position seeks to eliminate unsafe abortions and other violations of women's rights. It seeks to repeal all laws which permit the imprisonment or imposition of any other criminal sanction on women for seeking or having an abortion. They call on states to discriminalize abortion in all circumstances so that no woman is subject to penalties of any kind for having or seeking an abortion. They call on states to ensure timely access to legal, safe, and accessible abortion in case of unwanted pregnancy as a result of rape, sexual assault, or incest, or if the pregnancy poses is a risk to the life or risk to the health of the woman or girl.
Good day, everyone. By the way, my name is Say Montejo, a fifth reporter of Global Democracy. Today, my report is titled Feminist Perspective. When we say feminist perspective, it is a mother that giving her daughter a life lessons in how to grow up to be a respectable woman. Feminists approach the issue of reproductive rights from one another angle. They are foremost against any form of population control because they are compulsory by nature, resorting in a carrot and stick approach that actually does not empower women. It means that feminism is a movement to end 6 years explosion and expression. When we say 6 years explosions, it talks about practice by which a person achieves sexual gratification, financial gain, or advancement through the abuse or explosion of a person's sexuality by abrogating that person's human rights to dignity, equality, autonomy, and physical mental well-being. It is also point out that there is very little evidence that point to overpopulation as the culprit behind poverty and ecological devastation. There are five types of feminisms. First is liberal feminisms. Liberal feminism is a particular approach to achieving equality between men and women that emphasizes the power of individual person to alter discriminatory practice against women. For instance, it supports affirmative actions legislations requiring employers and educational institutions to make special attempts to include women in the pool of applicants, on the assumption that past and current discrimination may supply, overlook may qualified women applications. Second is radical feminisms. It is a theoretical and political perspective that focuses on the domination of women by men. The example is the expanding reproductive rights. This is the example of radical feminism. The third is Marxist feminisms. In other words, it is called anti-colonial movements. It is centered imperialisms and its mobilizations of feudal relations of gender, oppressions to capture populations, land, and markets. Socialist feminisms develop from these percepts in range of ways around the world. Fourth is cultural feminisms. It is a female nature or female essence, attempts to revalue and redefine attributes ascribed to fameless. Fifth is ecofeminisms. It is a branch of feminism that examines the connections between woman and nature. For example, this is the Chifko-Adolan movement in India. This is the example of ecofeminisms. Chifko-Adolan movement is a forest conservation movement that was led by indigenous women who were affected the most by the rapid deforestation in 1970s. Next is their governments. They believe that government assumptions that poverty and environmental degradations are caused by overpopulations are wrong. These factors ignore other equally important causes like the unequal distributions of wealth, lack of public safety, nets like universal health care, education, and gender equality, that points to overpopulations the culprit behind poverty and ecological devastation. Governments have not directly responded to criticisms, but one of the goals of 1994 United Nations International Conference on Population and Development suggested of the goal just suggest recognition of this issue. Country representatives to the conference agreed that women should receive family planning, counseling on abortion, danger of sexually transmitted disease, the nature sexuality, and the main elements of responsible parenthood. However, the conference also left to be in the individual countries to determine how these recommendations can be turned into programs.
Good morning everyone. So today I'm gonna discuss to you about my topic entitled Population Growth and Food Security. First of all, what is population? Population refers to a group of organisms of the same kind or species living in the same place at the same time. A population may increase or decrease due to birth, immigration, and migration. So let's now move to population growth. Population growth refers to change in the size of a population which can be either positive or negative over time, depending on the balance of birth and deaths. So if birth rate increases than death rate, it is expected that the population will increase. Today's global population has reached 7.4 billion and it is estimated to increase to 9.5 billion in 2050. Then it will increase by 11.2 billion by year 2100. The median of this population is 30.1 with a male median age at 29.4 years and female with 30.9 years. 95% of this population growth will happen in the developing countries, with demographers predicting that by the middle of this century, several countries will have tripled their population. So demographers said that 95% of population growth will happen in the developing countries, and they predict that by the middle of this century, several countries will have tripled their population. So, by the way, what is demographers? Demographers is the one who study population to determine their size and composition and to predict how they are likely to change in years to come. So, demographers said that several countries will triple their population, especially in developing countries, but the opposite is happening in the developed world where population remains steady in general, but declining in some of the most advanced countries like Japan and Singapore. However, this scenario is not a runoff that could get out of control. Demographers predict that the world population will stabilize by 2050 to 9 billion, although they warn that feeding of this population will be an immense challenge. So, how developed countries maintain their population? Some reason why developed countries' population remains steady because they tend to have a lower fertility rate due to lifestyle choices associated with economic affluence, where mortality rates are low. Why population growth is a challenge? So basically, if there are more people, more food supply is needed. When there is food shortage, this means that it's not enough food supply to sustain the needs of the people. So let's now move to food security. Food security means availability, accessibility, and affordability of food to all citizens of the country at all times. What is the importance of food security? Food security, it helps to enhance the productivity and consecutively the production of food. It can assist in providing opportunities for income generation, and it generally provides improvement of nutritional advice through home economics programs and enhance the quality of rural life by way of community development. The decline in fertility and existence of a young productive population, however, may not be enough to offset this concern over food security. The Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, warns that in order for countries to mitigate the impact of population growth, food production must increase by 70%. Annual cereal production must rise to 3 billion tons from the current 2.1 billion, and yearly meat production must go up to 200 million tons to reach 470 million. The problem here is that the global rate of growth of cereal had declined considerably from 3.2% in 1960 to just 1.5% in 2000. So, why population matters to food security? Almost 1 in 7 people around the world are chronically hungry, lacking enough food to be healthy and lead active lives. Agricultural policies, the price of certain food commodities such as meat and grain, and economic development hugely impact food security. But demographic trends also play a role. This is especially true in the absence of adequate food production, technology, and integrated programs that simultaneously address community needs for food and reproductive health. The Food and Agriculture Organization project by that in 2050. Population and economic growth will result in a doubling of demand for food globally. The Food and Agriculture Organization recommends that countries increase their investment in agriculture, craft long-term policies aimed at fighting poverty, and invest in research and development. The UN body also suggests that countries develop a comprehensive social services programs that includes food assistance, consistent delivery of health services, and education especially for the poor. If domestic production is not enough, it becomes essential for nations to import. The FAO therefore enjoins governments to keep their markets open and to eventually move towards a global trading system that is fair and competitive and that contributes to a dependable market for food. The aforementioned are worthy recommendations, but nation states shall need the political will to push through these sweeping changes in population growth and food security. This will take some time to happen, given that good governance is also a goal that many nations, especially in the developing world, have yet to attain. So it says that the Food and Agricultural Organization recommends that countries increase their investment in agriculture, craft, long-term policies aim at fighting poverty, and invest in research and development. Because if domestic production is not enough, it becomes essential for nations to import. The aforementioned are worthy recommendation, but nation state shall need the political will to push through these sweeping changes in population and food security. So that's all.
Conclusion. Demography is a complex discipline that requires the integration of various goals, social scientific data. As you have seen, demography changes and policies have impact on the environment, politics, resources, and others. Yet, at its core, demography accounts for growth and decline of the human species. It may be a large number or massive effects, but it is ultimately about people. Thus, no interdisciplinary accounts of globalization is complete without an accounting of people. Therefore, demography needs theoretical foundations. It does not need theory as a goal in itself, nor thus it need profound theories to reduce the statistic and the events in states, but from the core of a discipline whose task is not to describe population changes.